Hey guys, Josh, JMR Games on Twitter and on YouTube, and today I'm here with Hermit Druid at MagicCon Vegas 2023 to show off my deck, Stark, better known as Saint Traft and Karolus, Electric Slide. You'll be drawing so many cards you won't know what to do with them. So let's get into this. So to kind of break down Saint Traft and Rem to begin with, just because he's kind of a complicated commander, you can kind of boil him down to a couple major things. Specifically, every time he's tapped, you make a different type of creature. This happens up to 3 times in a turn. You make, starting with a 1/1 red human, a 1/1 blue spirit with flying, and then finally a 4/4 white angel with flying as well. The big thing is that whenever you cast a convoke spell, you get to untap him. So he's an interesting token commander in that you have these weird scenarios where you can't quite infinite with just him alone. He requires a little bit of extra work. So to that end, we obviously are playing a bunch of convoke cards. And thankfully, a lot of good convoke stuff has been released, especially with March of Machines. So we have stuff like Benny Braxologist from the new Capenna set. Being able to draw cards from tokens when you're basically make tokens every turn is fantastic. Interdisciplinary Mascot is a big dude that is a pain in the ass to get rid of and gets you more cards. So, of course, good stuff there. Just a big body for card draw. Zephyr Singer is actually pretty nice. It's one of the cheaper convoke cards, so we're able to get it out faster. And getting flying counters on everything means we can more easily get over our opponent's defenses. Knight Errant of Eos, good card, but I never hit well with it. But theoretically, you can reveal, top 6 and hit some good 4-drops or 3-drops. But it's basically more card draw to get more creatures into your deck, or out of your deck into your hand. Return to the Ranks is a very nice recursion spell. We have a decent amount of 2-drops or 1-drops in this deck that we wouldn't mind getting back into play. And Return to the Ranks sometimes just cycles as a convoke spell, but other times helps us get our main combos back on board. Ephemeral Shields is a very good convoke spell just because it's very cheap. Worst comes to worst, we cycle it with Saint Traft, make a dude. But most importantly, we use it to protect Saint Traft since it's a nice combat trick, being indestructibility. Transcendent Message is a hell of a card draw spell. Saying draw X cards on a single spell is a pretty fucking good rate, especially when you simply tap your creatures and not spend any mana whatsoever. Artistic Refusal is another fantastic card. Free counterspells are awesome. We're not playing Fierce Guardianship or like Mana Drain or Force Will. This is a pretty good alternative, honestly, being able to free cast a counterspell or maybe just for like 1 or 2 mana, and then more importantly, draw some cards for doing that is very huge. And then finally, City on Fire turns our very global damage effects and board and opponent damage effects into triple damage. It's basically most time free Fiery Emancipation, which is fucking insane. So, with the convoke stuff out of the way for how we actually tap our guys, let's go into the rest of the creature suite since that's pretty important. Simple stuff. We have some tutors. We are relying on a very large number of good artifacts in the deck. So to that end, we are playing Trinket Mage and Trophy Mage. Trinket Mage gets 1-drops or less. Trophy Mage gets 3-drops. We are specifically looking for stuff with Trophy Mage, like Relic of Legends, Halo Fountain. Trinket Mage gets stuff like, Soul Ring if you really need it, but more importantly, Paradise Mantle and some other artifacts we'll get into in a bit. Drum Bellower is basically Seedboard Muse, but not in green. We don't really care that our lands don't untap since most of our stuff has convoke, so we'll just convoke it out anyway. Stony Brook Schoolmaster is sort of like Saint Traft and Rem, except it only ever makes 1/1s, but there's no limit to how many times it'll untap and make more. With Intruder Alarm and Paradise Mantle, this goes infinite, which is a great combo. Esper Sentinel, it's Commander staple, gets some more cards. We're not playing Heuristic Study, but this is a nice way to draw some more cards. Magda, another combo enabler with Intruder Alarm or Paradise Mantle, just makes an insane amount of treasure and mana. Daring Thief is a bit of a spicy tech, I found. If you have a way to untap them, which we have numerous ways to do in the deck, you can just trade out your shitty artifact tokens for your opponent's better artifacts, your bad creature tokens for their creatures. This thing has actually done some insane work just nabbing random shit opponents have. It's awesome. Tetsuka Umezawa Fugitive helps us get through with our smaller tokens since everything is usually like a 1/1 or just lower mana cost, and so especially for the 4/4s, we don't really care too much because they're big anyway. We don't have to worry about them having to sneak through. Spark Double and Sakashima help amplify our ability to make tokens and more dudes by copying Saint Traft or other important legendary creatures you have in the deck. Sakashima is also great because if we ever want to make copies, we don't have to worry about legend rule. Welcoming Vampire, Curiosity Crafter, Afara, God of the Polis, and Unctus Grand Metatact all kind of serve the same general purpose of card draw. Welcoming Vampire hits for our smaller creatures, including our tokens, so sometimes it turns into at least one card each turn. Afara, God of the Polis, finds especially good place in this deck because we get to get that trigger every upkeep, so sometimes if we have ways to untap during opponent's turns and make more guys, we're drawing a card every turn. We're drawing at least one card every turn. 4 cards a turn cycle is pretty fucking good on rate. Curiosity Crafter not only is a nice Rec Tower, how would you say? It does a good impression of Rec Tower, but more importantly, we have a lot of tokens. Tokens draw cards and they deal combat damage. We have ways to get through Tetsuko and other methods for unblockable, so it gets its way through. Unctus is another weird inclusion, mostly because we're playing it because when we convoke stuff with blue creatures, now that turns into card cycling and rummaging. When we start including stuff like Teferi's Ageless Insight or Alheimer's Archive, this turns into card advantage, which is huge. Most of the time that Phyrexian blue ability doesn't really come up. It's really just as a way to help improve our card draw game. As for the rest of our creatures, we have some life gain in the form of Soul's Attendant and Suture Priest. Suture Priest managing to do some damage against other token decks is also pretty nice to have. Soul's Attendant just gets us massive amounts of life, and also doubled with the ability of Alheimer's Archive. And then finally, some of the bigger hitters in the deck. We have Mondrak. We are not running Anointed Procession, but we're playing Mondrak just because it's better to have a thing that actually taps for Convoke rather than just have an enchantment. Our big back-breaking cards include Kozilek, which, I'll be honest, is less in here because he's a big guy, and more so because when you discard him or when he hits the graveyard, he shovels himself back into your deck along with your graveyard. We do this because we have a lot of rummaging style effects, so we need those in order to actually not deck out, because that actually happens a lot in this deck. Our big combo finishers include Locust God and Elishnorn. Locust God because with Skull Clamp basically turns into game-endingly powerful. Elishnorn because we are a token deck after all, so of course we want to have a giant board of tokens, and also weaken our opponent's stuff. And the most dumb thing, you've heard of Thassa's Oracle Demonic Consultation. Have you heard of Thassa's Oracle and Pure Sight Marrow? Yes, with the power of Paradise Mantle or a way to tap Pure Sight Marrow for mana, we can exile every card in our library before finishing off with the Thoracle win. It is janky as hell, but hey, it's a Thoracle win, we take those. And even then, we can play Thoracle just for having low deck size anyway. So following from that, we are on to some of the more impactful enchantments. Smothering Tithe needs no introduction. This thing's been ruining Commander games since Ravnica Allegiance. You fucking know it. Takesha's Welcome is another way for card draw. Get small creatures into play. We're getting them consistently. This triggers every turn. Even though it's one card a turn, obviously if we can do it on other people's turns, we're getting more cards that way. Teferi's Ageless Insight is another way to kind of reward ourselves for drawing cards. We'll be drawing double every time we use these sort of effects, so from 1 to 2, 2 to 4 with Archive, gets kind of crazy. Jeskai Ascendancy is another sort of intruder alarm, but really more of just ways to cycle, ways to draw more cards, and ultimately a way to buff the hell out of our board, basically giving everything prowess for all intents and purposes. Prosperous Partnership is a bit of an underrated card from New Capenna. I fucking love this card. It is absolutely insane. The fact that it gives 2 1/1s barely even matters. We're not even going to use those guys to convoke. Most of the time, we are tapping stuff to make treasures, which means on a giant board, you can still block, tap your guys to make treasure. It's almost as good as Dockside, I would actually argue, to be honest. And then finally, some more combo type finishers. Impact Tremors, obviously. House of a fucking Magic card. We just want to nuke our opponent's board with our massive token army. If we can't get through for physical damage, we'll get through for effect damage. Freed from the Real is an important combo tool for the deck. We slap this on St. Traft and Rem. Suddenly, every blue mana that we have turns into constant tokens on everyone's turns. Gets absolutely ridiculous. And then obviously Freed from the Real for stuff like the 3-drop Merfolk that makes 1/1s. Gets absolutely crazy. And then finally, of course, Intruder Alarm. The combo fuel for the deck. If our deck is a garden, Intruder Alarm is very much the fertilizer for it. We need this. It is a very important card, so we have a number of ways to at least try to make it easier to search for that and other important cards of the deck. Getting to some of the instants that are not convoke based. It's mostly removal. We do have some other stuff. We have 2 arms, which is basically just Vitalize. It's really just there to let us basically untap our lands as creatures sort of idea. Enlightened Tutor to search for the aforementioned Intruder Alarm, but everybody knows Enlightened Tutor. And then in terms of the rest, it is mostly removal and some counter spells. We do have some other stuff in there, but it's very typical removal suite. We have Pongify, Arcane Denial, an offer you can't refuse for counter spells and disruption in blue, Path to Exile and Source to Plowshares in white, because what's a deck running white without those cards? And then finally, your good old Teferi's Protection for when your opponents are doing dumb shit and you just want to say, no, I'm going to piece the fuck out for a turn, have fun with that. Onto our artifacts. We are running a number of artifacts. They're all very important for the deck for card draw reasons or for just helping us generate more advantage. So, Staff of the Storyteller, another good card from the Phyrexia set, makes a token on ETB, which is just great to begin with, but basically turns all of our tokens into guaranteed draw a card every turn as long as we have a white open, which is pretty big. Idol of Oblivion sort of does a good impression of Staff, but not nearly as good. It's nice that it doesn't cost mana, but it does kind of be a pain in the ass. We need to make the token. If we can't, you know, a bit of a problem. Smuggler's Copter, making his triumphant return from standard play back in Kaladesh, Aether Revolt block. I don't know if I'd say ban-worthy in Commander. Definitely not, you know, the kind of same pace, but also just a good card. Lets us tap St. Traft just to get a token out and just turns to card advantage and a flying blocker if really need be. Skull Clamp, I don't think I need to really explain too much. We're making a bunch of 1/1s. Let's draw a bunch of fucking cards. Goes infinite with Locust God. Crazy. And finally, speaking of more card draw, Bident of Thassa and Alhemmer's Archive. Alhemmer's Archive doubling the cards that we draw outside of our main draw step, and also doubling life gain is pretty nice, but really we're doing for the draw effect. Bident of Thassa helps us draw an insane amount of cards. Combined with Curiosity Crafter and unblockable things like Tetsuko Omazawa, we go fucking crazy. Ways to generate mana are kind of very plentiful in this deck because we need the mana to do our various effects. The big one, of course, Paradise Mantle helps us do more combos with stuff in our deck. Wand of the World Soul, absolutely huge in this deck because our stuff gets Convoke, and because we're giving the spell Convoke, we can then untap St. Traft because we did just cast a spell that has Convoke. If we were ever using it to tap for white, we are actually in some very deep shit. Relic of Legends, another important card, basically gives Paradise Mantle effect to every legendary on our board without actually having to equip them with anything. So very important in the deck, so that's why we actually have a lot of artifact tutors for it. Fabricate used to be in this actually to search for it. We were that down bad to get Relic of Legends. And then finally, your other gambits of other mana rocks, including, you know, the usual. We have Soul Ring, Felwar Stone, and Arcane Signet. Of course, what's Commander deck without them? And finally, Springleaf Drum does a kind of weird impression of like Arcane Signet or Felwar Stone, but more so because we get to tap stuff to then trigger their effects. And then finally, the big two artifacts in the deck that at least help for combo wins, Halo Fountain and Throne of the God Pharaoh. I've never played a deck where Halo Fountain popped off more for the win con. It is such a versatile card for this deck. It makes dudes, it lets you untap your dudes to draw cards, which you can then tap later for Convoke effects. And then sometimes you just straight up win. Like, I've had so many games with just using Prosperous Partnership and Halo Fountain, just win the game on the spot because I just have a giant board of dudes. They don't really do much with them. And then finally, Throne of the God Pharaoh, because we're tapping down all of our dudes for Convoke anyway, we just really want to use that and leverage that for more damage. Finally, the non-creature enchantment instant artifacts. We have two of those. Coming also from March of the Machine, Invasion of Segovia. What a house of a card. Flips into Sea Tyrant, K to Sea Tyrant of Segovia. Absolutely a house of a card, gives all our shit and pretty much everything that we really want to be convoking out Convoke. Makes St. Traft untap on way more triggers, and also just untap stuff anyway. It's a very strong card. And then speaking of the artifact search, we are playing Tezzeret. Not even for that -5. That -5 like will never come up. We are playing it to untap artifacts and search our deck for artifacts and just get them into play just for 3 and 2 blue. Very important. Finally, our mana base, pretty simple. We are playing obviously a bunch of basic plains. We are playing a handful of basic islands, and we're playing a smattering of basic mountains. The mana base isn't that complicated. We have some fetch lands, not the funny ones. We just have really basic ones, Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic. We have mostly the dual lands from the pre-con, actually. I think the only one that's not in here is like Clifftop Retreat and Sulphur Falls, but you know, this whole gambit of lands, so like Clifftop Retreat, Exotic Orchard, Sulphur Falls, you know, and then like Frostbell Snarl and like the other lands in that kind of cycle. And finally, and also forgot Glacial Fortress. Obviously, Command Tower, because, you know, Commanders, we're playing fucking Commander, we need Command Tower, of course. Wreck Tower, because honestly, we are drawing so many goddamn cards, we do not want to be discarding too much. And then finally, some more niche lands. Maze of Ith is nice because we don't really have a great, like, combat potential, per se. Like, we really just want to keep our dudes up and hopefully not lose that many, so being able to blank a combat from a very big creature helps out more. Kind of sucks that this doesn't tap for mana on its own, though, which is kind of a pain in the ass. And finally, Manamo, School at Water's Edge, helps us untap more stuff. It's a blue, but it's just another way to do more untapping. So, that was deck profile. Hope you guys enjoyed. Follow me on Twitter and YouTube at JMarGameDesign, and also follow Hermit Druid. Awesome guy. Helped me, you know, do stuff here at Con and all that jazz.
Keep going.
Yeah, no, but yeah, follow Hermit Druid on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. But yeah, no, do all the social stuff, and I will be maybe not on Hermit Druid's channel, but on my own channel for more deck profiles, more card game content. See you there.